we are asking the question, which metrics matter and which ones actually move the needle when it comes to impact, when it comes to innovation, and when it comes to investment in our field. So for those ones who are joining us for the first time, my name is MaqC. I'm the CEO and Principal Consultant at Development Dynamics, and we are an insights hub. We are an impact accelerator. We are an innovation catalyst. And we partner with many leaders, with organizations, and with communities that are driving innovation and action towards a more inclusive, a more just, and a more sustainable world. And we are glad to see you join from different parts of the world, of the continent, especially the continent of Africa. And we are very keen to hear every one of your own reflections. And as an audience participant, we are hoping and building from the place of commonality, from the place that none of us is necessarily an expert as individuals. We only move in the village principle of Africa. We only move together as a community. So we would love to hear your reflections, your experiences, your questions, your insights, and your ideas. And the floor is indeed open for you to interject at any time, to speak. We are really relying on all our collective wisdom combined. And so as we move by and as we continue, I encourage you to just maybe type, say hi, say where you're joining us from, and then I will invite or start introducing the very great set of panelists who are joining us for this particular edition. We're very, very excited. So would like just to give a few pop-outs. So you can type your name and where you're joining us from, and sort of in just a quick way, what do you fancy the most about the 29th, February 29th? It happens once every 4 years. So is there anything special about your February 29th this year? If you can just type that in, we would be happy, and we will keep reading those as they continue. So last month, when we met for the first edition of last Thursdays, we had a fantastic panel, and we were looking at the intersection between gender justice, sexual reproductive health justice, and climate justice. And as a result of the fantastic insights that came together, it behooved us to actually put together an innovation challenge where young people aged between 18 and 30 are coming together into sort of like an incubation space. And our team of innovators, alongside some community participants from this, decided, why don't we put together this innovation challenge, which is now being called Hacking the Hyphen. I request Felicia, if you can hear, to please type the link for application for that particular innovation challenge that arose partly as a result of the conversations that we had last week about this intersectionality between gender justice, between climate justice, and between SRHR justice. And those three are aspects that are affecting women, are affecting people living with disability, are affecting many other minority groups. And there is a nice criteria to help identify who those will be. But one of the things that we keep really hearing and thinking a lot about together is that even as innovation and as impact and as investment is being designed, there is a very important part to understand which are the particular metrics that matter and why do they matter. So today, to take us through this very exciting journey, we've invited yet another great host of panelists who are seasoned experts in their own right in the areas of impact measurement and management. And I will introduce the first two, whom we'll start a bit of the conversation with, and as the rest join, we will continue. So allow me to introduce first Lucy Muigai. She's based in Nairobi, Kenya. She is the Chief Executive Officer at B-Lab Africa. And at B-Lab, they create standards and policies and programs and tools and frameworks that help businesses, including especially those who are in the social enterprise, but also other companies, to get certified as B Corps. And as a B Corp, you are indeed a verified organization that is meeting high social and environmental performance standards. And at this stage, I'd like to say that Development Dynamics is the newest baby in the room after a very rigorous 18-month process of going through the B Corp certification. Lucy will be joining us today. I would like you to just say hi quickly, and we will engage a little bit more. So Lucy, just in the Kenyan way, punga mikono.
Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here and to contribute to the conversation.
We can hear you loud and clear. That's beautiful. And joining us from South Africa is an independent monitoring and evaluation measurement consultant who has a vast history working with all kinds of impact-focused organizations and teams in the Southern African region. And as a testament to his passion for measurement and evaluation and the standards that are to be kept in that regard, including metrics and indicators, he also serves as a board member of the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association. He works with various entities, various organizations. And so, Molupe, I would love you to just say hi also, and we can hear your mic check as well.
Okay. Hi, and good afternoon to all the participants, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And thank you both. And we will introduce Moses. We'll introduce Moses and Anita as time goes by. But thank you for creating time. Let me just take a sip of water. We thank you so much for creating time to have this conversation with us today, and also just your willingness to enrich our conversations with your wealth of contributions and experiences. I hope everyone on the participants list is ready as we explore this very exciting journey together. So buckle up, get ready. And first to you, Lucy. From your view, leading B-Lab Africa and working with many organizations through a self-review process, what have you observed that is surprising to you, especially about the trends and challenges that leaders and organizations could be struggling with when it comes to defining and tracking impact?
Thank you, MaqC. So I have been in this space for 7 years now, supporting businesses and very passionate about sustainability and impact. So I want to first of all read a definition of impact that I found. I'm hoping it's simple enough, but we'll see. So impact refers to material effects experienced by the people and planet, basically the world, both positive and negative. You may describe impact in terms of overcoming challenges or achieving certain outcomes. So with that said, one of the things I've always noticed is that a lot of people don't know in what they do every day, they're actually creating impact, right? Every day, an organization, an individual, you're actually creating, it might be negative, it might be positive, but there is everything you're doing, there's impact involved in that, right? So I always find that like it's a light bulb for people to know that it's not something that is foreign. It's actually already something that we do every day. And so that lack of awareness that what we're doing is creating impact. And then there's also the element of right now, because impact and sustainability is also such a big thing, I'd say even now in Africa, where do I start? It's a starting point for me as an organization, to start measuring and managing impact, in what I am doing. So I think we'll dive deeper into that in our later conversation. And then, how then do I communicate impact? Is this what you said about this event called SunCup that is currently taking place in Nairobi, where you are talking about all these deals that are being made by impact investors, right? You have to be able to communicate that impact, right? So I'd say those are the three big things that I would say that have been very challenging, right? As an organization that's trying to start off measuring and managing impact. How do I define it? Am I even creating it? It starts from creation, awareness. How do I start? And then how do I communicate that?
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And Molupe, it's often been said that what is measured is what is managed, and conversely, what isn't measured isn't managed. And in a world where historically the data didn't used to exist as much to measure what we really wanted to do or what organizations and leaders really wanted to do, most evaluators like yourself, most M&D folks would then end up just measuring what they could rather than what they should. But I guess now with the evolution of a lot of tools, a lot of knowledge in this time that we are living in, a very rich knowledge economy, maybe that trend has started to change. I would love to ask, what approach have you found useful to for organizations and their leaders to adopt particular tools or particular frameworks that can be used to measure the metrics that matter? And while at it, if you can help us define metrics, now that Lucy has helped us define impact for you, help us define metrics, and then let us know what tools do you then need to use to begin to define that? What is needed and where should someone start?
Thank you so much, MaqC. That's quite a mouthful. So I'm going to do my best attempt to answer all of it. So if there are any gaps, please assist me there. Well, I think just to point that the measurement of impact is very tricky in the sense that in my experience, I've found that companies or organizations will come to you to say, help us measure the impact of this or that intervention of program. Firstly, the question I always ask, firstly, where do we start? What was your objectives? What were the outcomes that you envisaged that you wanted to achieve? And in some instances, they are not even present. So now we have to do it kind of what's called retrospectively to say, okay, this is how much you spent, or this is what in your head you wanted to achieve with this particular intervention within this specific time period. Okay, let's start. What were the objectives? And then combining that with M&E. M&E, our favorite go-to every time is the theory of change. That let's go a step back further. What situation was there? What was the need for this particular intervention? What did you want to, at the end of the day, to achieve? And then we interrogate. You find that sometimes it's not even, in fact, many times it's not explicitly articulated. It's implicit in the program documents or the interventions that were particularly designed. So we take it there. Then after retrospectively, then developing kind of the outcomes here. The outcomes here are the indicators, which is what you would want to measure, as you indicated, this particular, are we achieving that particular or outcome or the change that we want to see? And then that's not really ideal kind of situation, but more often than not, that is a situation that we find. So subsequent to that, then we would then say, okay, what are the frameworks? We sit down with the clients and then advise what are the existing standards and frameworks in place to measure impact that you could perhaps look at. The most common ones you find that are existent is the social return on investments, commonly known as the SROI, the impact reporting and investment standards, which is commonly known as IRIS or IRIS, and then the global reporting initiative. I would perhaps advise that our panelists perhaps look at that, and I would be more keen to know from also our audience which other frameworks that they found to be very useful in this regard. But my stance in this, MaqC, it's kind of a bit contentious. Says that I've found that the common OECD GAC criteria of relevance, efficiency, effectiveness, sustainability, coherence, and impact. We have introduced this concept of impact again. I have utilized those perhaps because I'm biased, because I'm from an M&E background, and those are our famous tools that we always carry in our tool bags. Whenever you ask us to assess an intervention, I found that using those particular ones, they're intertwined with all of these tools. These tools, the SROI, the impact reported investment, for me, they all originate from that. Even though I cannot really support this with much of the literature, perhaps it's worthy of a study. But I found that when I talk with my clients and I put this very simply in terms that this is what we're going to do. These are the GAC criteria, those that I just mentioned, that they are more often than not amenable, and they always achieve the objectives that they want to, So yeah, so thank you very much. Let me pause there, Maxine. Thank you.
Very nice, and thank you. I guess when we are thinking about impact measurement and impact management in practice, and as Molupe, you've mentioned what tools and what frameworks, and you've listed a few. You've listed the SROI, you've listed the impact IRIS, and then there are many others. I guess even UN SDGs and global reporting initiatives and global impact investing network. There's many others that I guess we all can, different, even part of our audience can contribute towards. There's one though that I mentioned earlier, and that's why Lucy is in the room. There is the B impact assessment, and I wonder, Lucy, if you could talk a little bit about the B impact assessment and especially its evolution and why it's now a world standard, a global standard, a benchmark that organizations that are working towards impact, environmental impact, and that are also working towards sustainability should be considering to use. Please speak freely about the B impact assessment tool.
Thank you, MaqC. Great. So as B Lab, we have been we were founded back in 2007. And one of the things our mandate is we created impact measurement and management tools that businesses would be able to measure and manage their impact. So one of the tools that MaqC is talking about here is the BRA, B Impact Assessment. This is an online tool that any organization will be able to log into. It is a free tool that businesses would be able to measure, manage, and improve on their impact. When I'm done, I'm actually going to type out the link so that companies can actually create an assessment, or individuals, and start working on it. So again, as I said, it's an online tool. It is free. Any business would be able to use it. So I work at B Lab. I've been here for 7 years, and I think it's a fantastic tool. It is one of their features is that it's a holistic tool. It's a tool that you'd be able to look at your business in its entirety. And it gives you that starting point that I spoke about. You're able to look at your whole business. We look at your governance practices, employee practices, the impact you're creating on the environment, the community, and the customers. So basically a 360-degree look at your organization. This is where I'm at, and this is how I'd be able to improve. We have over 100 versions of the tool based on the sector that your business is in, the size of your business, and even the location. Just because we know a business is, let's say, 10 workers based out of Nairobi, and a business based out of the US with 1,000 workers would not be looking at the same tool in different industries. So when you're creating your account, we just say, just be mindful about the details you're putting in, so that you're able to see the assessment that fits your business. One of the things that I love about the tool as well is that you can actually include as many team members as you want. We want it to be collaborative. When you're thinking about improving and where you're at, we want it to be collaborative. So you'll be able, as a CEO, you can say, HR maybe will take care of the worker section. You have legal, the governance or finance, because we also have a few questions about financials, so you can have different people from different departments actually logging into the tool and all working together. And the beauty about it, you don't need to finish at the same time. You can actually start and then, let's say, stop. Everything is already saved automatically, and you can continue from that day, from wherever you're at. We've actually embedded improvement guidance and best practice guides based out of, based out of best practice guides from companies that we certified as B Corps. We try and we have localized so that even a business in Africa would be able to see businesses actually in the region that they can relate to. So again, as I said, a very good tool to start off. And just a bit about our standards. We do have an independent body called the Standards Advisory Council. That the ones that actually are able to, first of all, it's made up of experts. All these standard bodies that Molupe had actually spoken about, we've actually called them in to be part of our experts, because one of the things we try to do is, how do we make sure that somebody is not working on, GRI, and then when they come to work on the BIA, it's completely different. We try and see, how do we make sure that we are all speaking the same language? So we get experts from academia, from all these standard bodies, from different locations, so that they feed into the assessment. And the whole idea is they are the ones who actually approve the standards. It is an independent body. And again, as I said, we were started 17 years ago. We've actually iterated our standards 6 times since we started. The whole idea is, after every 3 years, we are looking at what is currently taking place. Those are the standards that we are now incorporating in our tool, so that businesses would be able to be up to date with what they should be. They should be on what's complying with, or putting as their best practice. We are currently actually also in the process of iterating our standards. And right now we are looking with a date of 2025, right? And the whole idea is making sure, even as B Lab and our assessment tools, they're up to date, so that when businesses are using them, they are actually looking at, or we've incorporated whatever is currently in practice at the moment. So I hope I've done a good job in terms of explaining it.
No, that's really, really good. And I actually do hope, even as you share the link for the B Impact Assessment, that colleagues joining us from different parts of the continent, if you haven't yet taken this route, I do highly encourage you to consider. For us, if I can give just like a lived experience, is we spoke with one advisor of B Corp some sort of like 2 years ago, and we said we would love to benchmark. We were 3 years at the time. We were 3 years old at the time. And we know for most social enterprises, for most organizations, after you, the first 5 years are the hardest, because you're defining your model, you're defining what impact means to you, you're defining what value proposition you have. And I can tell you, it's not an easy process. We are turning 5 as development dynamics in just 2 months' time, and having 2 years ago to pause and reflect and think, how do we want to grow ourselves? When this was recommended to us, we knew that we will have to improve on our governance. We'll have to improve on how we work with, recruit, and motivate and inspire, and the kind of value systems that we have with our workers. We have to do the same for the communities that we work with, and we have to be environmental conscious. So it's not just people, it's people and planet. And then we also have to really consider, how well do we work with our customers? And in all of this, when we started the process, and that's why I would like just to piggyback on what Lucy is mentioning, when you start the process, I do not think you know how far it will refine you, as an organization, but it will. We said 18 or so months ago that all hands will be on deck for this. We appointed an individual within the team to sort of help us lead the rest of us through this process. But this is the kind of process that without a shadow of doubt, every single leader that is thinking about impact should be considering to use. And the link has been shared there. We hope that as we continue, even with this conversation, we can hear for this, and maybe for any other that exists, what the experience of different individuals would be. As we give Lucy and myself a moment to just breathe, I also want to introduce in our panel our very own innovation and impact analyst. I keep getting that wrong. I say at times I say impact and insights analysts. Nonetheless, all of this is the truth. Since joining the team some 9 months or so, Moses Mwai has led and supported quite a number of assignments that we've been doing that require a lot of analysis, especially when it comes to the kind of impact that as our consulting wing or our consulting arm would be offering. So he's led projects around strategy development, culture transformation, governance, and many others. And today, Moses is joining us from the SunClub Summit, where so many conversations are taking place from the lens of impact investing to the lens of innovation and measurement. And Moses, as you come in, welcome to the panel. What conversations and what key questions are arising for you as a budding analyst in terms of just designing and tracking the metrics that matter from the conference that you are in? What are some of the few concepts that you're either hearing of or beginning to question or getting deeper understanding in? We would love to invite your reflection on that. Karibu.
Right. Thank you so much for the invitation. Also, my sincerest apologies for joining a bit late. There was a lot in terms of even just getting to the room where I'm in. But yeah, I've been able to at least catch a bit of what Lucy has been sharing, and then also your reflections on the same. And so yeah, again, thank you for the opportunity. And in responding to the question presented, thank you. What I would say is that a lot of the conversations here have been very interesting, especially given that it is from the perspective of a catalyst, right? So we're talking about catalyzing impact. And so looking at it from the perspective of investors with capital, and then trying to see how to channel this capital towards innovators who have this very amazing ideas. And one of the things that's coming up as a very huge connecting factor, especially around developing metrics that matter, is how can we look at the theory of change as a framework that really facilitates this process. Because one of the things that was mentioned, especially coming into the introduction of this, of these conversations, was there's a lot of interest in applying resources towards what is happening in terms of innovation, but we find ourselves not speaking the same language, or we find that our interest areas not being clarified within the innovator's work. And so it's very important then to demystify what impact looks like from an investor's perspective, or like those with resources, and also demystifying what impact would look like from an innovator's perspective in terms of the work that they're trying to implement and that they're trying to do. So yeah, that's what I can give.
Thank you, and we'll keep reflecting a lot more as we continue. Molupe, welcome back. You know, up until this stage, we've identified the need for there to be proper tools that guide us and proper frameworks that guide us towards or guide impact players, whether they're investors or they are implementers in sort of like optimizing and applying themselves towards you know, the metrics that matter. How can we address data limitations from a quality perspective, from an accessibility and responsible data collection, just the entire journey of metrics are about data points, and so ensuring that we have the proper data is a very critical aspect. From your experience as you know, as someone working with many organizations, how do we actually address data limitations and data challenges?
Okay, thank you so much, MaqC and colleagues. Well, let me first apologize. I got cut off. We are having power cuts over here, so I had forgotten to activate my backup. So hence the loss in communication. But let me just point out that I think without data, we cannot measure impact, you know. So data is at the heart of measuring any impact that the intervention has sought to achieve. So more often than not, what we realize that when it comes to data, in a lot of instances, as I indicated earlier, you find that there was no theory of change or an explicit framework of how an intervention perhaps was designed to achieve the objective that it would achieve. So in that sense, then you find that when it comes to secondary data that we want to measure impact from an organization, in many instances, it's not there. And what this means then is that you have to actually go out into the field, go actually source the primary data yourself once you have identified collectively with the client what is required in terms of measuring these particular indicators that you would have come up with. So in that sense, you know, when it comes to social impact, most cases than not, I mean, we live in a complex social world here with our social impact. And we find that in a social world, more often than not, the data we need is not only quantitative. So you find that you rely on both quantitative and qualitative data. And then it means then now you have to apply mixed methods most of the time. So in this sense, it means that you have to be open and of faith with diversifying data sources, be open to using a diversity of data sources. Of course, there is limitations in terms of the budget as well from clients in order when it comes to collecting the ideal data that you want, you know. You find that then you have to be innovative in the way that you use, of course, use multiple data sources, but one also be cognizant of the budgetary limitations that one will be facing as a researcher when you go to collect that. You must always ensure that the data that you have is quality data, because at the end of the day, this data is going to be used to inform or to decide more often than not whether these interventions, for example, were successful, or whether these interventions should continue after that. So you should ensure that there is scientific rigor as well in your data collection methods that you're going to be applying, and the validation techniques to ensure that the data that you use is both reliable and are accurate. So as well, I think what is then also critical is to ensure that the data that you use is also accessible and transparent to your stakeholders. Will be balancing a lot of balls here. For example, you have your ethical considerations and ethical responsibilities to the beneficiaries or to your stakeholders who provided you the data. At the same time, you want to be transparent to your client in terms of how you reach the findings and the conclusions that, for example, you did. So there's a balancing act that one needs to do in that instance. So linked to that, of course, during the data collection, you have to always, I think I need to emphasize that we need to always be ethical in terms of how the data is collected and how the data is stored. So issues such as, for example, obtaining informed consent, protecting the privacy and confidentiality. If you promise people anonymity, which was always preferred, stick to it, you know. And of course, as my colleague Lucy mentioned earlier as well, when she talked about data regulations or data protection regulations, of those standards, or standards, I think is the word that you use, those must always be maintained as well. So lastly, we need to always make sure that when we are using data, we always make the link, or in our synthesis of the data, we must always draw the linkage between the primary data, how it was manipulated, or how it was being triangulated with other secondary data to reach the final conclusion. So we must always make sure that that linkage is clear in our analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Molupe. And I guess I can summarize your very important points with a quote I had this week, that as practitioners in social impact, we must release ourselves from the idea that there is a single standard for designing for and planning and measuring impact. And instead, we should focus on the integrity of the process. And you're calling us a lot towards the rigor of the process. You're calling us a lot towards the ethical practices around the process, but not necessarily genuinely a single standard. I think some standards work. And what I liked about what Lucy mentioned at the beginning is that there are various iterations of the B impact assessment that look at what kind of sector an organization is in, what kind of growth stage that any organization or any initiative is in, and those are very important perspectives to consider. Lucy, as we talk about B Corp and the standards for B impact assessments and the various others that B Corp also applies itself towards, what would you advise organizations that are, working towards the journey of impact to how would you advise them to take this on as one of the very important things alongside the doing? Because at times we get focused on the doing. We get focused on our reason for existence is this, and that is what we are driving towards. How would you advise us, and what approaches would you encourage participants that are in here who are working towards their impact, how can they develop processes internally and institutionalize them to ensure that at every stage you're tracking and also maybe being able to tell of your stories of impact?
Thank you, MaqC. So I'll start by saying, first of all, I spoke about the tool. Please log in. I can see Event Development Dynamics have actually shared that. It's a free tool. You can actually start from there. If nothing else, because sometimes I know, especially when you're starting out as a business, you're just trying to survive. So you don't have maybe additional money to be able to now start thinking about a consultant to support you or not, right? So the tool is actually, again, as you said, it's a self-review. You can actually sit down and start working on it by yourself. And what I also suggest is, see, as you're doing your day-to-day, because again, as I said, impact is what you do every day. As you're working on the assessment tool, or when you're working on it, there are going to be short, long-term and mid-term goals, right? The whole idea is what is most aligned to your strategy, right? I think that's very important, because even if we were to go to the SDGs, there's no way you can work on all the 17 SDGs, right? You have to see which one is very aligned. Yeah, like I'll give an example, SDGs. 5 marks, 1 to 5, even 1 is enough, because we understand you're trying to run a business or, you know, an organization. But the whole idea is you want to embed, you want to be a responsible business from the get-go. Yeah. So the whole idea is what would make sense based on my strategy, based on the resources I have. And here resources, we are looking at how big your team is, and then how much money do you want to use in terms of including, incorporating some of these things. What will be your small wins as well? Because again, as I say, there are things where it's just a policy, a HR policy, and you're done. But there are other bigger things that will need more money. So as you work, you put in your short, mid, and long-term goals, and see again which ones are aligned, and then start working from there. And then one of the things as sustainability practitioners, we're very, because sometimes maybe we complicate things a lot. And I would even say, even if you're a company that's starting out, an Excel sheet, you can use that to actually start tracking some data. If that is where we're at, you know, you don't have to think about a complex, you know, CRM or software that you're thinking you have to use a bit more money. No, you can actually, a simple tool like Excel can help you start tracking some important data in your organization. And based out of that data, you can now be able to now start a narrative or creating, you know, a story about maybe the jobs you're creating, or, you know, we moved from X to Y, we've been able to, you know, the events that we're doing. So it can be as simple as that. You can start from there based out of the resources. It doesn't have, because sometimes I think we think impact is for, you know, the big organizations, multinationals. I can't do it. No, start small. I always believe, and the best thing about starting small or wherever you are is that even as your organization becomes more complex and becomes bigger, you've already embedded it in your DNA. So it's just a matter of how do I revamp it, right? How do I improve on it when I have more resources, right? But you can actually start from where you are with what you have. The whole idea is continuous improvement. No company is there yet. I repeat that, no company is there yet. Even the most impactful organization still has room to grow and improve.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to connect that and bring it to you, Moses, who, you know, in sort of like the past year or so, you have worked with various organizations, from movements to remarkable NGOs and other coalitions, and also just organizations that are young. What is there a common thing or a differentiation? So on one end, is there a common challenge that they all face? and what are the unique challenges that you might have seen in regards to impact, defining impact, measuring impact, tracking it, between organizations and movements and coalitions? What are the similarities and differences when it comes to impact measurement?
I think to respond to that, I would say impact measurement is best clarified when we understand our North Star. So ideally, where an organization understands what it is driving towards, it can work backwards and begin to identify where the metrics that matter would ideally align. And so I think where you have, I think, an organization with greater complexity, especially in its operations, would ideally find itself also it would also find itself finding difficulty understanding what the North Star is. And where, for instance, if you have a movement, I think movements, especially around social change, will find themselves having a very abstract approach towards what impact looks like, and very qualitative, a very qualitative nature to identifying what the impact metrics would be. And where you're a movement, then size is also something that's considered, because the idea of forming a movement is finding strength in numbers. Where you find strength in numbers, you're bringing in organizations that are viewing a North Star in a different way. So how do you then harmonize all these understandings and expectations, and then use that now better clarified North Star to work backwards in terms of identifying what really are we here for? What is the outcome of the work that we're doing and what it is contributing to? And I think as you do that, you begin to, as you identify your North Star, you begin to deconstruct impact. And that is one of the things I would say. So it would be regardless of the organization type, if it's an organization, if it's a movement, or whatever the case may be, I think your starting point is, what is my North Star? And then then I think that provides a very good avenue towards identifying what impact then would be. And what that helps is where we were very disengaged in terms of what we were trying to do, by demystifying what we are trying to get at, we find that we can now complement our own efforts depending again on the organization type. So if it's an organization working with a team in itself, we can then begin to see how we can channel value contributions from the people we bring in. If we're looking at it from a movement perspective, we can then also see it from that same lens and see how then we can do this value contribution towards an identified North Star, and then apply our metrics and measurement against that. So I think that would be, yeah.
That's a good submission. Thank you. And one of the conversations I'm having lately with various people is impact at times, and just going back to that conversation of North Star, impact at times, we do not quite capture the total essence of the kind of impact that an organization is having, because at the start of that North Star, if we are looking for instance, to the SDG contribution we want to make is around gender equality. And so if we have forums and activities and initiatives that are working towards gender equality, the resulting effects is many other things tend to happen. So we tend to alleviate poverty, or rather, yeah, we tend to work towards the zero poverty SDG. We tend to work towards access to education, access to health. And while at times within our North Star, we have a very clearly defined end, part of impact measurement process and part of the metrics that matter, in my experience, have been to also allow ourselves to track unintended outcomes. And those ones at times lead to very surprising results. You know, there could be an unintended outcome about reducing teen pregnancies, or ensuring that girls are staying in school longer because of a program that you're doing. But it calls for a lot of consciousness to imagine what metrics truly matter, and to keep also evolving them as feedback is coming. And Molupe, from your experience, And just based on what I have mentioned, it brings us to the place of attribution versus contribution, which for every person working within measurement and evaluation, monitoring and evaluation, is a headache. And at times it's a serious nightmare, because as I've just said, there are things that we are directly contributing to. There are many things that we are indirectly contributing to that at times end up being very pleasant surprises. And for most organizations that are morphing, we can keep taking on more and more and more, while still trying to defend our position that we have contributed to this and we have or this can be attributed to us. I would love your reflections on the difference between attribution and contribution, and what your assessment on that is, and what your advice to organizations that could be battling with that conversation, what that could look like from your end.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, MaqC. I think, yeah, when it comes to the issue of attribution and contribution, it's a very contentious one. On the one hand, as an organization, you want to demonstrate that your intervention is having this significant changes on particular community or particular context, you know. And then you want to demonstrate that those work, the outputs that we are delivering, you're under pressure usually from your funders to say, okay, you have trained so many people, you have built so many schools. What are the changes now that we are seeing, you know, to demonstrate now the attribution of the intervention to that? Well, firstly, let me start by attempted to define perhaps what I understand by attribution. So attribution then would be referred to the direct causal relationship between a specific intervention and or activity and observed outcomes. So essentially, attributions aims to determine whether the observed changes can be solely, I think the key word here is solely, attributed to the organization's actions, excluding the influence of external factors. So remember that here in the social world, we are not operating under lab conditions, you know. Under lab conditions, you can wear your dust coat and put chemical X and put chemical Y, and then the result that follows, you can say, yeah, as a result of the interaction of chemical X and chemical Y, we are realizing this. But in the social world, as we know, is more messy and more complex than that. So I'll quickly get back to that, but let me just move on to contribution. Usually, I think what is kind of relatively easier in inverted commas would be to claim contribution, because contribution, unlike attribution, yet it acknowledges that multiple factors may contribute to observed outcomes, you know. So essentially, contribution then seeks to understand the extent to which an organization's actions or an intervention has contributed to the observed changes that we see taking place. And it takes into account the influence of external factors and other stakeholders' interventions. So this is kind of the more amenable one that we use as evaluators or as impact practitioners, you know. So essentially, let me just quickly move on to this. Essentially, then, when you are measuring, when you are tracking attribution and contribution, you find that there's kind of three frameworks, if I may refer to them as that, or three approaches, methodological approaches that one could utilize when you're measuring, you are going to be speaking about attribution and contribution of an intervention. So the gold standard would be experimental research designs. I think here is where you would have, for example, a baseline conditions that, okay, we have this community X and community Y, which are more or less identical or similar or identical in terms of the contextual factors. Now we want to introduce this intervention. Now we measure the variables that we want to change at conceptualization or inception before the intervention takes place, you know, and then we move on to the community wide, which could be, for example, a control. I mean, we borrow the language here of positivists or people who are in the lab. We really talk about control. Okay, perhaps let me just quickly say that's the kind of like the gold standard in terms of impact. But as we all know, in our interventions, we rarely ever encounter situations wherein we have those controls, like for the experimental group, etc., etc. We don't have that, so we cannot come now and claim attribution. So we have then, okay, there's the experimental design. Perhaps I'm not going to go to them. Then there's the experimental design. Then there's the one that we usually use, which is the case study. The positivists don't quite like this one because it's primarily most of the time employs qualitative methods wherein we ask people, okay, what are the observed changes that you have seen? Then we get to hear stories from people. You know, we don't, in some instances, you find that we don't really have the quantitative data. Instead, we'll rely on the counterfactual. Okay, if this intervention did not happen, what do you think could have been the case? And then we start to write the story then that links perhaps the intervention's effect on this particular story, intervention that or situation that we are seeing. So I think we always need to understand that in the social world, we are dealing with wicked problems, you know, that are shaped and formed by so many things at the same time that we cannot, despite our best intentions, and here it goes back to the ethical dimension as well, and despite our best intention that we want to support our client, we also have to be true to the story and true to the data that we find on the ground. So which is quite a tricky one, I must say. I think our colleagues will also support me in this. It's very tough balancing the requirements of your client who wants to see the impact and what the story on the ground says, you know?
Yep.
So I think we always have to be careful and also be as ethical as we possibly can in that respect. Thank you very much.
A famous Nairobi, Kenya saying is, "Kwa ground vitu ni different." Things are very different on the ground. At times, a client or an organization could be setting up for desiring to have a very an exclusive contribution to a particular change, but the story on the ground is that there are so many intersected aspects that that require a lot of tracking to then say that I own this, and that's a very good thing. Moses, as I don't know what happened to my video. It's jumping. It's your name. As a budding practitioner yourself, and as someone who is coming into this from a very curious, experts are curious. So from a very curious perspective, what still remain as fundamental questions that you're based on your learning, that these are still fundamental questions that the likes of Lucy, the likes of Molupe, the likes of those others on the call who've been on this for a while, that they should be helping to answer?
Right. So thank you. Also, I don't know why it decided to do that on the screen. But I think the 5 dimensions of impact. I don't know if you can hear me well. I hope I haven't frozen.
No, we can get you well.
Can be heard?
Yes, we can hear you well, Moses. You can proceed.
Solid. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, the questions would be, for instance, what are the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, and what are the contributions that you're trying to make, for instance? And then who are the stakeholders that would ideally be experiencing the outcomes that you are working towards? Who are these underserved communities that prior to the inception of your activities would ideally not necessarily be experiencing the outcomes that you're working towards. Then also, there's also the question of how much, like what is the degree of change that these communities or these individuals that you're working towards engaging with, what exactly is the degree of change that you are looking for them to experience, and for how long are you looking towards, are you looking towards that outcome being experienced by these communities? And then again, just going back into that question of attribution and contribution, it's very, I think something that I see very strongly within the concept of contribution is that I do not necessarily take ownership of an outcome as such, but then I see its influence towards outcomes through my work. And I think that is also something to consider of great importance, especially where, especially looking against the siloing of activities. I think it's something important to consider where even for an organization, it look back at its activities and learn where to prioritize, you know? And then also things like risk, you know, the likelihood that the impacts that you're trying to make to the activity that you're doing will be experienced differently. And in this case, it could easily be positive and it could also be negative, you know? Yeah, and so these are some of the things that would be of great consideration. This is presented as the 5 dimensions of impact, and I think this would be something that would help a lot to advise how, you know, how activities would be undertaken. And also it would clarify in a huge way, especially given the nature of the conversations we're having here at the Sun Club, is like, you know, as an investor, I'm trying to see what I am playing into through my support of a certain organization. And an organization then can begin to deconstruct what this support is looking towards developing. So yeah, so I think those are some crucial questions to expand on. Again, those could be entry points that would really advise the direction for organizations to follow.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you for your reflection. And to participants, if you have any question, you can throw it on chat. If you have any reflection, please, we would love to hear from you. Remember, this is about collective wisdom. We are coming to connect. We are coming to learn together. We are coming to sort of address questions that we have now that impact the future of impact, the future of investment into the area of impact. And as we now begin to look as to how we land this ship, Lucy, how do you keep? You mentioned at the beginning, these standards are evolving every year, and we are glad to be having one of our team members contribute to the evolution of the standards. Why is it important for the things that mattered 3 years ago to still matter, but for us to also take on things that will be mattering when we are thinking about impact 3 years from now? How do you incentivize collaboration with others, you know, to look at the tools, to look at the frameworks, to look at the principles of metrics and impact in an evolving way? And why is it important, and what kind of processes need to be put in place for that? It's just a simple question on, because we are having ever-changing dynamics, ever-changing needs of organizations of impact. How do we keep up? You know, how do we keep evolving and leaning on the right wall when it comes to impact, when it comes to investment, when it comes to metrics that matter?
Great question. So again, as I've mentioned for B-Lab, it's always been, you know, after every 3-year cycle. This is actually our biggest one yet, because we're doing a total overhaul of how this the impact assessment will look like. But the reason why I believe it's important is because you want to stay up to date, right? There are very many standards, and I believe that you should not be following all of them. It's good to know about them, but you want to be in what is in line with my industry. Those are the ones you want to keep at keep up with. From an investment perspective, from an exporting perspective, like right now, I know there's so much that is taking place at the EU right now. As a business owner in Kenya, you want to, who might be, in Africa, sorry, in Africa, that might be exporting to the EU. You want to know what is up so that at least your produce is meeting those standards, right? So it's, from a business perspective, it's very paramount. From a trade perspective, so that you make sure you are meeting those standards, right? And even for BLAB, the reason why it's so important for us is because we want to make sure the over 200,000 businesses that are using our tools are actually using the most up-to-date standards, not outdated standards. And meaning when you're going to the market, you are not, you're not competing at a level, at an equal playing field with a business that has already been up to scratch. So I do believe it's very important for us. That's why collaboration is key. How we've structured even the collaboration at BLAB is that we have what we call, there's a Standards Advisory Council that I spoke about that is in charge of approving all our standards. But in each market, we have what we call regional advisory boards, right? We do have working committees made up of businesses that use up our tools, the one that Moses is in. But we also have a standing regional advisory board made up of Africa experts who are supposed to feed into our tools as well. Because the whole idea is, how do we make sure that the tool is adaptable? That even as we create our standards, we are considering markets, you know, the locality, because there's no way we can be now looking at, you know, how a company in Europe should just copy paste and put it in Africa. So how do we make sure we are taking in the local context of where a market is at to be able to now make sure that the standard is something that is also attainable to a business. We are not saying it is less in terms of a lower standard, but it is attainable based out of all the factors. So for us, collaboration is very important. Making sure that the standard makes sense for the market so that a business is also not, as they're working with our tools, they don't feel like, you know, because in Africa, we have this thing of thinking, if I don't have maximum points, like a better way of saying it, I'm not doing well. But the whole idea of the tool is actually measuring your positive impact and how do we make sure we are de-risking the negative impact, right? So collaboration is key because, again, as I mentioned, there's so many standards, but we don't want to be working in silos, in standalone. That's how businesses become confused. That's how even us as an industry, we look fragmented. But I must admit, from the time I started to now, there's a way that we're all trying to work towards the same goal. We are not there yet because, again, so many standards to choose from. But I do believe that, again, as you are told as well, we are trying to, you know, standardize, make sure that we are incorporating everybody who is a partner. And one of the things we've made sure that we've done as an organization, as a global organization, is partnering with these organizations. Like BLAB has a partnership with Global Reporting Initiative. And we've actually done a study on how the similarities and difference between the B impact assessment and the GRI. We actually have a partnership with UN Global Compact, where we both co-created the SDG Action Manager that businesses can use to be able to measure and track their progress towards the SDGs. So these partnerships and collaborations are very important to make sure that we are aligned in what we are trying to tell businesses as they work to become as they work to improving, measuring, managing their impact.
Thank you, Lucy. And I want to invite final reflections, but I also want to offer one of my own through the experience that we have been going through with the B impact assessment. there were sort of like 6 areas that we were sort of being measured against. And what Lucy is mentioning is that the idea of wanting to have the highest pass mark in each, that is almost innate in anyone, in any African or any person. And so as we were feeling, the tool, at times we felt that we are probably not ready for this journey, because in some impact areas, and out of the 6 defined impact areas, we felt lacking a lot, especially when it comes to environment, because one, we are a fully remote, geographically distributed team of 10, 11 people, and we did not know how, we can say that every single person in the team is improving their own workstation and their own area, and contributing towards like overall environmental stewardship. And I'm being honest, because our profile is now public. Someone from the DD team can drop it here. We did not fare much well, in that impact area, and it's for us, it's the score that we got sort of showed us that even when we are working remotely, even wherever we are, there's got to be a lot of environmental consciousness, even while we are relating with each other, when we are relating with clients, when we are thinking about, do I really need to be at a physical meeting that is going to happen for one day, and I need to burn so many air miles and have so much carbon print just to go and come back after a day, such issues are at the end of it all, they contribute towards environment, towards climate. And that's an area that we felt and that we saw we have a lot of improvement to do. There are some impact areas, for instance, when our organization was being measured against standards that contribute to our teams, financial, physical, professional, and social well-being, we seemed to score pretty well on those, as well as on the impact area around community and how community conscious we are, and also the impact area on customers and how we work with the different clients that we have, and improve and keep improving our products and services. Another area for our improvement, though the score was validated at the end and we felt good about it, was there are some improvements to make around our governance and pertaining towards the policies and the practices that help our mission, our ethics, our accountability, our transparency, even go to the next stage. So it's a good process, very, very important process to think through the entire remit of impact assessment. And I am now inviting closing remarks from, we can start with you, Molupe. What would be the one advice that you would give organizations as they think about measuring metrics that matter? What's your closing remark in that regard?
Well, thank you so much, MaqC. I think it would be to say that when they are designing interventions, we should try as much as possible also to be thinking with the end in mind, think what we want to achieve, think how we know we have achieved that, think thoroughly as well about the intervention and the connectivity between what we are doing or what we want to see, so that in the end we are able then to ascertain whether our interventions have been successful or not. So just to say, look at all of these frameworks that are available. I like the one as well. I'm going to also explore the one that Lucy has shared, and I hope Lucy could perhaps share in the chat a link to that BI one so that we can see it. And then, yeah, just to say thank you, and yeah, I enjoyed the forum, and I look forward to learning from one of you colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us from down south. And Lucy, I welcome you to also offer your closing remarks.
Thank you, MaqC. I'm very passionate about sustainability, and I'd say again, as I said, I've been in this space for 7 years, and I can see in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of interest towards being an impactful business, a responsible business. And I think it's exciting in Africa. Obviously, still a long way to go, but I think it's very exciting. I do believe, honestly, sincerely, and it's aligned to my values, that businesses or people can actually be profitable and purposeful, right? You can actually be a responsible social impact organization, or just any business generally, yeah, and you can be a good business and make money while at it. It's something I'm passionate about. I do believe it's possible. There are tools out there. There are experts out there to help you. Here, there is development dynamics. It's Molupe. There's us. So the help is there to be able for you to start your journey. And again, as I said, no business is there yet. I know there's some businesses that, we know them for being impactful, but I do believe every organization is in a process of constant improvement. So even you, wherever you're here, you can start the journey now from wherever you are with the limited resources that you're doing. As I mentioned, there is impact or creative. It might be positive or negative, but we'd want you to focus more on the positive impact and how do we reduce the negative impact. So that's my part in short. Thank you, Development Dynamics, MaqC, for the opportunity as well.
Oh, thank you, Lucy, that you could join. And Moses, you can use your Elihu kind of wisdom to also offer your final reflections. Oh, and now your statue, you're stuck. There has been ups and downs in terms of internet connection at Sun Club, so Moses may not be able to close. But if he joins back, we'll definitely share his input. Or are you back, Moses? And as Moses maybe turns on his mic and camera, I would like to invite you all just to a small post-session poll. It shouldn't take you long. It's just a few minutes that we want to invite you to share your thoughts and insights, especially on how we can improve this particular, we call it an ecosystem connection, where on a monthly basis we can come and rely on each other to power through, to think through the most important aspects of the kind of social impact work that we do. So as we gear up to the next episode or the next edition of this, which again will be on the last Thursday of March, and with a topic of choice that we are trying to get from as many of us as can participate, kindly on chat right now, we've shared a link. If you can use that link to just offer 1 or 2 reflections, it's a very brief poll, shouldn't take you long, and please mark your calendar for the next one on the it should be March 26th, on the last Thursday of March. And we have received a lot today. We have received from this team a lot of reflections on what metrics looks like, what impact looks like, what we have heard about the challenges that we face and we as practitioners in the field face, and some of the tools and frameworks that we can use with very clear examples of how those reflect at both an organization level as well as at a community level. And with what we have received, we'll be able to package that into a set of insights that we can share back to those who participated and also those who didn't make to participate. And we'll also put up the link for this as a YouTube video. Moses, now that you're back and you're looking at us, I hope you don't freeze. Please close the session for us.
Okay, so what I was thinking was, I'm joking, I'm not freezing. But anyway, again, thank you so much for, for the conversations that we've had. My sincerest apologies with just the lack of stability for the network. I was very glad for the gems that have been shared within this conversation. And I think such conversations, have I frozen?
No,
Sorry.
we
Oh,
can hear
sorry.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. So such conversations truly incentivize um, the element of tracking and monitoring impact. And I'm so glad that Lucy mentioned that you don't have to think about it in such a complicated way. It could be done in very simple ways, but in ways that are iterating, in ways that are constantly improving. And I think engaging in conversations like this really it really destroys that fear, or it begins to really break that fear of, okay, I'm this months in, or I'm this years into my activities. I don't know how to start looking back at the impact that I've been having in my work, whether positive or negative. And I think through such a conversation, that no longer stands as an anxiety. I think it now becomes an opportunity, especially for storytelling around what you've been doing. It even becomes a validating point for you running an organization or engaging within an organization. And so to those of us, so to our panelists, I'm very thankful for creating the time or taking the time towards this conversation. Y'all are awesome. And for our attendees, thank you so much for having your ears plugged in into the great insights that are being presented here, and also taking them up and utilizing them in whatever avenue of influence that you may have. If it is not attributable directly to you, trust me, you're contributing great impact towards this space. And so kudos to you for those efforts. I think that is what I would conclude with. God bless you all as you leave this virtual meeting, and be good and be good at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until next time, thank you all, and see you again at the next last Thursday's session. Thank you. Good day, good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Who has the recording?